So I recently asked all of my Instagram followers to send me in some bookish would you rathers, and today I'm finally going to be going through them and answering some of them. So thank you so much to every single person who did take the time to send something in, because without you, I wouldn't have been able to make this video. And if in the future you did want to be a part of these type of videos, then make sure to follow me on Instagram, because I randomly post questions like this in my stories. So I'll have a link to that down below. But with that said, let's jump right in. All right, so first up is, would you rather read a book with the miscommunication trope or the surprise baby trope? So I feel like this person knows me very well, because I absolutely hate both of these. But if I did have to choose between the two, I do think that I would choose the miscommunication over the surprise baby, because surprise baby is surprise baby. But miscommunication can sometimes work in a book depending on how it ends up going down. If the entire book, the whole issue is the fact that like there's a lot of miscommunication, yeah, it will drive me up the wall. But sometimes miscommunication can feel very realistic. And if it's not dragged out for too long and they fix the miscommunication issue in like a normal amount of time, then it honestly probably wouldn't bother me that much. So I'm definitely going with miscommunication. Would you rather have to read only one book for the rest of your life or your least favorite genre? So that is quite hard, because either I can only read books of a genre that I'm not a big fan of, but I could read as many books as I want, or I could only read one book for the rest of my life. So I feel like I would rather read possibly one book for the rest of my life, because if I'm not going to enjoy all the other books that I'm reading, because I'm just like not a huge fan of the genre, then I'd rather just like read less, and whenever I am in the mood of reading, just go back to my absolute favorite book. I feel like that makes sense. Okay, so another person who does know me very well, would you rather the third act breakup or the miscommunication trope? And I do absolutely hate both of these, but I do think that I hate a third act breakup even more. Like if you have an issue so bad to the point where you feel like you have to break up and then you're gonna get back together like however quickly after that, I just don't really believe in your relationship as much. But miscommunication can feel more realistic. Like if for some reason you guys aren't on the same page and therefore you have a bit of a fight, but you don't break up and then you figure it out, I feel like that feels like a much more strong relationship than an all-out third act breakup. So definitely gonna go with a miscommunication on that one. Would you rather get some regular and some discrete covers in a series, or different book sizes of series? So I'm definitely gonna go with some regular and discrete, because once it's sitting on your shelf, all you see is the spine. So it won't make a huge difference what the covers look like, but you will see the different sizes of the book, and that would definitely bug me much more. So I'm gonna go with the different types of covers. Only be able to read fantasy or contemporary. So if I literally had to choose between the two, I definitely would go with fantasy. I have like my ups and downs with fantasy. Sometimes I have the patience for it, sometimes I don't, but I feel like in the long run, it would be more enjoyable to only read fantasy over only reading contemporary. Oh my gosh, okay. Only ever be able to reread Sarah J. Maas or Mariana Zapata. This is literally so hard, because I do reread these two authors the most out of every single other author and book in my entire library. And which one would I choose? Holy crap, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like Mariana Zapata would give me more of a variety, because even though all her books are very similar, I do have like 8 books that I absolutely love by her, and they all are different stories. But with Sarah J. Maas, I only have 2 series that I would like to reread. And on top of that, it's really only Throne of Glass that like I'm a diehard, I will reread this one forever. I like A Court of like Thorns and Roses, but just for A Court of Mist and Fury. So I feel like I get more out of Throne of Glass, Sarah J. Maas, but then overall, I feel like maybe I do get more out of Mariana Zapata. But then it's what we just said, contemporary versus fantasy. Which one would I want to reread forever? Honestly, I don't know, and this is like driving me crazy that I can't give an answer. Should I just like go with my gut and say Sarah J. Maas, or should I really think about this and go with Mariana Zapata? Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm gonna cop out and like plead the fifth here. Be in a romance or a fantasy book. So this one is pretty easy. I would definitely go with a fantasy book. First of all, because sometimes fantasy books do have romances in it, but also I just think that a fantasy world would be so much more fun. Like obviously, yeah, it would depend on which fantasy book and then also like which character I am in the fantasy book. But I do think overall it would be so much more fun to live in a fantasy world than just like a regular romance book. This next one is a really good one. Miss the ending or the plot twist? So of the two, I definitely rather miss the ending, because I love plot twists, especially because not only do I feel like I don't get them often enough in my books, but also oftentimes I will see them coming. So I absolutely love a plot twist when it really could get me. And even without like a plot twist in the mix, I oftentimes do like skim over endings, because once everything is like all settled and good and we're just like closing everything up, I really don't care as much as like the rest of the story. So So I'll sometimes skip the ending or like skim the ending. Well, not skip. I don't skip the ending. I'm not crazy. But sometimes I do skim over it, and I honestly don't really care too much about like how books close often. Like sometimes, yeah, it's an absolutely amazing ending till the very last word. But I feel like overall, I would much rather see the plot twist than like see the ending. Oh my goodness, would you rather face Maeve or Amarantha? So happens to be, I was never like really scared of Amarantha. Like Maeve, I find extremely intimidating and she would freak me out quite a bit. But Amarantha, for some reason, maybe it was the way that it was just like written into that first book or just the way that like her entire storyline was built up, but I never found her to be too intimidating. So if I had to choose one or the other, I definitely feel like I should go with Amarantha over Maeve. Only read one author for the rest of your life or never read your top 10 authors again. So this is honestly a pretty mean question because if you think about it, top 10 authors, do I even have 10 favorite authors? I don't know off the top of my head. So I feel like if I wasn't able to read the top 10, then what books would I be stuck with? So I feel like it might be a little bit smarter of me to just be stuck with, one author for the rest of my life, because then I could choose like my favorite author that happens to have like a lot of books out there, aka like Sarah J. Maas or Mariana Zapata. So anyway, yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with. Choose the start or end of your author's next book. I definitely would choose the start. I feel like it doesn't really matter too much about how a book ends because it's gonna end in a happily ever after. Like I was saying before, I don't really care too much about the endings, but the start of a book is so important. And that's what could really like turn a reader on or off from the story. So without a doubt, I would definitely be going with like, I would like to choose how the book actually starts. A series or a standalone? So this is so hard. I feel like this answer would change depending on what time in my life you are asking this. Like right when I got back into reading, I would without a doubt always choose series. And then I kind of got over the idea of series for a little bit there. It got super obsessed with standalones. And now I still absolutely love standalones, but I'm also kind of getting myself back into series. And this is very hard because like, how do you compare things that are so different? So what I would say is that it would really depend on what genre we're talking about. Like if we're talking about fantasy, I would without a doubt go with series, even though I do feel like sometimes, fantasy standalones can be really fun. I think, more often than not, fantasy worlds really need a series to fully build up the entire storyline and the world and things along those lines. But if we're talking about romance, I would always choose standalones, even over like series or duets or anything like that. Because oftentimes if we're just talking about a romance book and then you get a duet, I'm very wary because I always feel like it's just like a money grab sort of thing from the author where they're going to lengthen out and like really drag out their story just so that they could get like 2 books out of one storyline. And I oftentimes feel like it should be a standalone. And you don't often come across romance series that really have enough content to fill all of the books that it's trying to fill. So for romance, we're going with standalones, and for fantasy, we're going with series. Only borrow books from the library or only buy one a month? So this is a very good question. I feel like it would depend on, again, what time in my life you are asking me this question. Like in the past, one a month would not do it. And I feel like I would just need like the excess amount from the library. So I would have gone with that. But at the moment, I'm not even sure if I am buying one a month. So I feel like it would be smarter for me to say buy one a month because then I could buy any book that I want versus being stuck with whatever my library has to offer. But also you didn't exactly specify like just my library or libraries in general. And then if we're talking about me having the option of multiple libraries, then I feel like I have a wide variety of books and I'd more often than not be able to find something that would like suit my needs. So maybe it is a better option to go with the library. So yeah, in the past I would have gone with the library, and then now in the future, again, we're still gonna go with the library. Would you rather only be able to read the Throne of Glass series or never be able to read Throne of Glass again? So thing is I have already read this series 4 times, so I feel like I could like close my eyes and more or less reread the entire series without actually looking at the story, because that is more or less how well I know it. I can repeat all of my favorite quotes without having to look at the book or anything like that. So I feel like it might be smarter of me to just be like, okay, I've read Throne of Glass enough. Let's now be able to read other series versus just only be able to read that, because again, I feel like I don't even fully need the books to be able to read the story. So yeah, I'm gonna go with just never being able to read it again, which is super sad, but I feel like it'll be better in the long run. Would you rather spend a day with Mariana Zapata characters or ACOTAR characters? So even though I absolutely love all of Mariana Zapata characters, I definitely think they would not be as much fun to hang out with versus the inner circle. Plus, if I'm hanging out with all the ACOTAR characters, I'm sure that we're going to be hanging out in Valaris. So I have to go with ACOTAR. Burn all of your Mariana Zapata books or never read the Throne of Glass series again. So I'm getting the feeling like you guys really know me for two things, and honestly, I'm not that upset about it. But between the two, I do think I'd have to go with burn all of my Mariana Zapata books, just so that I do have the opportunity to still read Throne of Glass, mostly because there is quite a loophole in this question, which is that I still would have my Mariana Zapata audiobooks, and I very much do enjoy listening to all her books, even though I still love my physical copies. But I feel like I could live without my physical copies, and then I still get Throne of Glass, plus I can still consume Mariana Zapata stories, just in a different format. Would you rather be the hero or the villain? I think I would definitely rather be the villain, just because I feel like it's a little bit more fun. And in real life, I do honestly feel a little bit more villainy than the hero-y, so I feel like I would just fit that character a little bit better. Would you rather be in a sporty romance or a fantasy romance? So I think I would definitely rather be in a fantasy romance, mostly because while I love sport romances, I don't think that I per se would want to be in one, just because of like the tropes that generally happen in those type of books, and just the way that like sport romances, like the main guy or whoever is like the professional athlete, he lives his life. I don't per se think that I would want to live that sort of life, but in a fantasy world, that is kind of a lot of fun. Like maybe I could be a princess, or maybe I could be like the damsel in distress, and then like I have like a monster come and save me. Who the hell knows what it could work out? But in fantasy, I feel like there are a lot more options, and it would be a lot more fun to be in a fantasy sort of romance than just like a sports romance. Would you rather be inside on a rainy day reading a book or outside under a tree in the breeze reading? So both of these are great options, but of the two, I do think that I would choose outside, because I'm a huge fan of reading outside and like getting a tan. And even though it specifically says like being under the tree of sorts, I do think that like it's just more relaxing to be like outside in nature than stuck inside on a rainy day. Even though I feel like it would also depend on the book. Like if I'm in the middle of like a high stakes fantasy series, it might be more fun to be like cuddled up on my couch on a rainy day versus like outside I might be reading a fluffy romance. So I feel like, you know, it kind of depends, but in general, I do think that I enjoy reading outside more versus inside. Also, less distractions outside. Like when I'm outside, I feel like I could sit there for like 6 hours and just like knock out 3/4 of a book, but inside I might get a little bit distracted, and maybe I want to go get a snack, maybe I'm a little bit cold and I need to like resituate myself, or my phone's next to me and like I just get bored for a second, so I pick it up. But like outside, I feel like it's not the same vibe. So I think outside would win over inside. Would you rather only buy books with their first edition covers or buy the cutest ones as well, but it's blank? So without a doubt, this is a little bit of like a weird question to me, but without a doubt, I would buy the first edition covers. First of all, I don't really care too much about what my cover looks like. I will take more often than not the cheapest option. And if there are like two options, I would go with the one that I like more, but like usually it's not a big deal for me. I really couldn't care less about what the cover looks like, even though I can always appreciate a good cover. But I happen to be quite against all of these like multiple special edition copies of like, you know, your favorite books, where they just come out with like a bunch of book boxes and everybody's getting a different cover, and like they're special editions and it's hard to get on and like it's very expensive and things along those lines. I find the entire like special edition book box, multiple copies of the same exact book that has nothing different on the inside, but you just have a pretty cover, I find it honestly to be a little bit stupid. And I'm not like bashing anybody who's very into it. I have a lot of friends who are super into getting special edition covers, but I find it to be a huge waste of money, very like feeding into consumerism and just like these authors trying to money grab things that are not necessary. If you were gonna give me a book that has a bonus scene on the inside and therefore it comes with a different cover, or there's something unique about the inside of the book and that's why I want to buy that special edition cover, then that's a different story. But all of these like special edition covers lately, it's literally the same exact thing inside and you're just getting a pretty cover. So I can literally go remake that on my computer, print it out and put it onto my book if I really wanted to. So I'm not a fan of special covers, so I definitely would just take the first edition. Would you rather never read Throne of Glass ever again or never read ACOTAR again? So I've actually said this multiple times anytime that I do bring up Sarah J. Maas in general, but I definitely would cut out ACOTAR versus cutting out Throne of Glass. I am a much bigger fan of the entire Throne of Glass series in general versus the ACOTAR series, so yeah, that is my answer. Only read one author for the rest of your life or only read one trope for the rest of your life. So at first glance, this is making me feel like I want to go with only read one author because tropes can be very, very touchy. Like there's a reason why I pulled back very heavily from reading romances lately, and that's mostly because any book that I pick up, once I get the vibe of what the tropes are about, I can more or less guess the entire book because they always just like play themselves out the same way. So you can really get sick of a trope very, very quickly. But at the same time, it would also depend on the trope that we're talking about. Like if you're talking about like a fake dating trope, yeah, hell no, I'm going with just picking an author versus reading only fake dating for the rest of my life. But if you're saying like, oh, Grumpy Sunshine, I feel like I can honestly read a Grumpy Sunshine situation for the rest of my life because there's going to be other tropes involved that really can change up the story every time. So this is a very like, give me the specifics and then I'll choose. But I think I would go with choosing one trope over one author, but it really would depend on like what's the trope and what's the author. Would you rather accidental pregnancy or second chance romance? Ugh, this is such a bad question, but in such a good way. You definitely know my taste, and I don't know which one I would want to choose. I hate second chance romances with a passion, but I also absolutely hate accidental pregnancies. And I don't know. I feel like literally neither. Like I can't even choose between the two. Maybe a second chance romance if I can choose the details of what the second chance situation is. Like more often than not, my reason why I hate second chance romances is because of the way that the reasoning behind the second chance. But if it had a good reasoning behind it, then maybe I can get behind that over accidental pregnancies. Honestly, I don't know. This is hurting my head a little bit. Would you rather cheating or a pregnancy trope? So I absolutely hate the pregnancy trope, but the thing is that I definitely hate cheating more, and I would choose pregnancy over cheating. There is no coming back from cheating for me. I do not understand why people feel the need to cheat. It will never make sense to me in real life, in books. Why are you putting cheating, especially in books, why are you putting cheating in a romance book? Like I'm trying to fall in love with these two people falling in love, and how can I fall in love with them when one of them feels the need to cheat? Not only can you have broken up with them and then gone on your way and gotten with whoever you wanted to get with, but also if you felt the need to cheat, then you obviously don't love that person enough. Like I don't care for any excuse that you have whatsoever. If you are going to cheat on somebody, then you obviously don't love them enough to care for their feelings for whatever the situation is. So I would definitely choose pregnancy over cheating, no doubt about it. Would you rather read a book that's the size of your body or a book the size of your fingernails? So this is a very creative question, and I feel like I would have to choose a book that's the size of my body because it definitely would entertain me longer. Obviously, there could be a lot of issues that comes with a book that is that large, but a book that is the size of my fingernail, without a doubt, will be way too short no matter what. And I'm a really big build-up person, so I will definitely take the massive book over the tiny book. Would you rather take a vacation to Terracin or the Night Court? So when you're saying the Night Court, did you mean Valaris or did you mean Under the Mountain? Because if you meant like the bad place under the mountain, then no question about it, I'd go to Terracin. But if it was Terracin versus Valaris, I would choose Valaris only because I feel like we know a lot more of Valaris versus Terracin. Like we only get small snippets of Terracin, and even though the small snippets that we got seems like it's a great place, and especially like after the timeline of Throne of Glass, like once Aileen and Rowan go and fix it up and it's like a thriving place, I feel like it would be a great place to visit, and maybe I would choose Terracin over Valaris at that point. But from what we know of the books, technically, if it was Valaris versus Terracin, I feel like I would have to choose Valaris. Read only age gaps or Grumpy Sunshines? No doubt about it, going with Grumpy Sunshines. Only reread books forever or never again reread a book? So this is a great question because I happen to love rereading books, and it would be sad to know that I can never reread a book again. But I also do think that there are like unlimited amounts of books in the entire world, and out of just the books that I've read in like my life so far, I do feel like I wouldn't per se want to only be stuck with reading those forever. So I feel like I would choose to just like, okay, I read them, let's move on and like read new things for the rest of my life, because I feel like there's endless amount of books, but not necessarily endless amount of books that I've already read that I would want to reread, you know? So I feel like I've been sitting here for a while, so I'm only gonna answer a couple more. So next up, someone asked, would you rather end up with Aiden or Culty? And those are two male main characters from Marianne's Pot of books. And between the two, I do think that I would choose Aiden over Culty, even though I am a big fan of both of them. But between the two men as they are, I do think that I like Aiden over Culty. So that's my choice. What is with you guys today on the pregnancy trope? God damn it. Would you rather read only unplanned pregnancy tropes or never read romance again? So I am going to assume that you meant like the romance genre, because it is very hard to like cut out everything that has romances in it. Like you can find romance in fantasy books, you can find romances in mystery books, you can find romance in contemporary books, you can find romance subplots in other genres. And therefore, since I hate the unplanned pregnancy trope so much, I am going to choose with just like, never reading romance specifically again, because I feel like I can still find my fix while reading other genres in the world. And then the last one that I'm gonna do for today's video is, would you rather read He Falls First or She Falls First? And I am a much bigger fan of He Falls First. Sometimes when I'm reading a She Falls First, I feel like it is quite desperate. Like I want the guy to love the girl way more than the girl loves him. And sometimes it's like she falls first, but he falls harder. And I do absolutely love that trope as well. But I still rather see the guy pining after the girl before the girl is ready for him versus the opposite. It's just the way that like, I don't know, I prefer for it to go down. So yeah, with that said, that is all of the prompts that I'm going to be going through for today's video. There were so many more that I wanted to get to, but I didn't really want to make this video too long, so I'm going to stop myself here. But if you did enjoy watching this and you wanted to see me do it again or do another type of prompt, like a very similar video to this again, then let me know down in the comment section below, because I would love to do more of these. I love making these videos and I feel like I don't do them enough. So with that said, if you did enjoy watching, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed, because I would really appreciate it. But either way, I just appreciate you taking the time to watch, so thank you so much for that. And until next time, enjoy reading.